presenters are given 10 minutes to present. The question before us is it desirable for us to amend the Constitution in order to effect expropriation of land for public use without compensation or not? Presenters who will be presenting will be attempting to give us the answer to the question before us. On the side of the members, our role today is to listen to the presentations. It is not to agree or to disagree with what is being presented, but to attentively listen to what is being presented. Where there needs be, there will be a chance for clarity-seeking questions. And clarity-seeking questions will not be arguments. It will be clarity-seeking questions. And I will make a determination whether this is a clarity-seeking question or an argument, and I'll rule as such. On the side of the presenters, you are given 10 minutes, and then later on to respond to clarity-seeking questions. The chance to respond to clarity-seeking questions is not an opportunity to make further arguments and presentations. If you were unable to complete your presentation in 10 minutes, the clarity-seeking question time is not an opportunity for you to continue with your presentation, but it's an opportunity to respond to the clarity-seeking questions. I suppose you are at one. Yes. The program is before us, members. We have an apology here from Honorable Carter, who is off sick. So far, that's the only apology that we are having. Oh, can we have other apologies if there be? Honorable Mkwele?
Thanks, Chair. Our Deputy President, Floyd Shivambo. Thank you. And President Julius Malema, he's on Pan-African Parliament in Rwanda. Thank you.
Any other apology? Honorable.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be long in the committee this morning due to some engagements in the House this afternoon. Yeah, so I have to prepare.
Thank you. I want to apologize for Dr. Lotridge. She will be coming, but she'll be late.
No, Chair, thank you. I also indicated to you earlier that I'll be in and out. I mean, no disrespect to any of the presenters if I'm not here due to other commitments with the Minister of Finance later today. Thank you, Chair, and in the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much. According to the program, the first presenter will be Dr. V. Matlati. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Matlati, yes, from AFASA.
Honorable Chairpersons, honorable members, and also the guests who are and presenters who are here, on behalf of the African Farmers Association of South Africa, AFASA, I would really like to greet you and thank you for the opportunity for AFASA to be given to come and present here. I am the president of the African Farmers Association, AFASA. I am here with me with one of the members representing the Commodity Association, which is a member of AFASA, the Deputy Chairperson of the commodity, which is sugar, under the organization SAFTA from South Africa. So we are both here. The name of the Deputy Chairperson is Miss Lindiwe Hlubi, and the two of us will be representing, and she'll be assisting with the questions as well of clarity. So just in terms of time, mine is basically to come and clarify our position as AFASA as far as the land issue is concerned. We as AFASA started the process of the land long before the discussion of expropriation without compensation, which has been started by this House. I'm raising this issue because what we are basically presenting comes from a very long process that was specifically focusing at district level with engagements and dialogues prior to 2016. And in October 2016, we took a memorandum of understanding of issues to the then President Zuma at the Union Building. And the issues that I'm going to raise here, they were specifically focusing on land and water. And we were grateful that this opportunity was opened because we could place the practical issues that black farmers are dealing with in terms of a national platform that is presenting an opportunity for us to address them. So AFASA, just briefly, was started in 2011. It is an association with close to 300,000 members. The majority of the members are small-scale farmers. It also includes cooperatives and subsistence farmers. We also have commercial farmers. But generally, it is a black farmer organization. We also have, as I indicated, the commodity associations that are affiliated. They are red meat, sugar, grain, so various commodities, wildlife that are affiliated to AFASA. So the position that we're presenting here covers a spectrum of those. What I'm going to focus on is specifically what takes us to that position and what are we proposing within a short space of time. What we are saying as AFASA is that the plight of the black farmer in this country is one of the worst in terms of the positions, because the failure of land reform and its root causes has disadvantaged black farmers mostly. And in a sense, this presents a problem because we know about the ills that faced farm workers. And this also includes all those categories. But ours is going to specifically also focus on the farm workers. So we see the land reform failure being on the issue of identification of who the beneficiary is. We see the land failure being also in terms of the post-settlement support that the farmers are actually not getting. And partly it deals with the problem, which is a generic problem, of a structural inadequacy from a training perspective in terms of access to skills, to issues of access to finance, with 90% of the funds from the land bank DFIs to more in private sector being mainly for white establishments, and black farmers having a serious problem of access to finance, and also the problem of markets. So we say to you today that ours is a proposal that says farmers have analyzed very specifically the issues of land reform failures. And at the root of those land reform failures is the following. One, the failure of government to properly implement the the legislation that exists, as well as driven under the current constitution. But we go further to say some of the pieces of legislation have made it difficult for farmers to operate. And some of those pull from the disinvestment as far as black farmers are concerned. We place this specifically in terms of the graphs that we have presented to you of the government spending on agriculture that has continued to go down. And these figures are showing generally that the commitment in terms of support of black farmers has been at the center of this problem. But what we are in coming back to the issue of the root causes, we're saying the whole system in terms of the value chain of land reform is actually a big issue in terms of corruption, in terms of collusion between private sector as well as government. And at the center of that is that the current legislation does not address some of the specific issues. Land restitution has been extremely inefficiently implemented, but we are sitting with a situation where we do not have land redistribution laws that can assist in the redistribution of the land. So the absence of legislation also of dealing with expropriation of specifically agricultural land with or without compensation has also complicated the matter even further. And the implementation of the proposals that have come through the National Development Plan, the fact that they are not legislated but voluntary, makes it difficult for people to actually align with what is being there. So at the end of the day, we sit at the mercy of who the official is at that moment and how nice they would want to be. On the other hand, we sit at the mercy of being assisted by the white farmers. Whoever is nice or not nice, you are at that mercy. There's a structural problem of a system that just has not worked. What are we proposing then? We are proposing that we specifically address the issues of legislation. We would like to ensure that we have specific legislation that addresses the issue of expropriation with and without compensation. And we actually go further to say we recognize the Constitution and its accommodation of expropriation with some level of compensation. But we have a problem because that refers mainly to the issue of just and equitability. And in application, we have had serious problems of non-adherence to that. But at another level, we believe that we need a constitution that provides clarity on the matter of expropriation, because what has happened is that the focus has been on a market-based approach, and we believe that this has failed us. And linked to that is the expropriation, is the issue of willing buyer, willing seller. So we propose that the Constitution is pushed to amendment for clarity as far as the area of expropriation without compensation. Because whilst we appreciate the presentation of the possibility of the expropriation without the bill, which could include expropriation without compensation in specific areas, we also are concerned that this is going to result in that being contested and us being stuck in an unconstitutional resolution. So ours is to say we are pushing, lastly, for a whole dispensation.
I'm sorry, Doctor, I think you have run out of time.
Okay, so we're pushing for a dispensation for a transformative and comprehensive land reform.
My good doctor, you
Okay.
have run out of time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Honorable NZIMANDE, I failed to acknowledge you in the beginning, my co-chair. Are you fine? Thank you very much. Members, there you have it. Do you have any clarity seeking questions? You are not forced to. Honorable Swart, Dr. Melder, Honorable Buchman, Honorable Mwabe, Honorable Mutapo, Honorable Mukwili, Honorable Filtani, lastly Honorable Smith. In that order.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. I'd ask the doctor just to comment on the issue of should such an amendment be permitted. On page 9 of 20, I'd ask clarity on your proposition that the state lacks the capacity to effectively implement, monitor and enforce land policies. On the issue of clarity, should expropriation without compensation be allowed? Is it not problematic, given your statement here, that the state lacks the capacity, and given what the evidence we've heard about corruption in the state departments, will that not aggravate the situation and not contribute to land reform? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next speaker.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm here. I would like to thank the doctor for the presentation. Just one remark and then a question or two. On page 8 at the top, paragraph 4.3, you make the statement to say most of the land availed on the market and bought by the state is unproductive. We all know that that is not the case. We've got many examples and we all know that. On page 3 of your document, paragraph 1.5, you state that AFASA has registered entity representing 300,000 black farmers. Could you give us an indication where do they farm currently? And in connection then with that, I've not heard you say anything about traditional land. In other words, land currently under the control of our traditional leaders. What is your position with regard to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chairperson. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's sincerely appreciated. I just want to get maybe a view from the presenter. In terms of the issue of compensation, or let's say the issue without compensation, I just want to know, what is your view? Should it apply to all forms of land, or should it only be restricted to certain portions of land? For example, development land, unproductive land, and so on. Can I just get your view on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Sabula Lamam. My question is based on your recommendations on page 20, the last page. The very first recommendation, 9.1. You speak about, you recommend the establishment of the Land and Agrarian Ombudsman. It's something unique. Can you explain more about that? What informs that? What might be the objectives of that office? Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Mine is just a comment. Thank you so much, Dr. Vuyo Mahlati, for the presentation. And thank you so much also for at least giving us recommendations, especially on page 13 of 20, 5.9, and on recommendation as Honorable Mwabe has alluded to. I think it will assist us when we come to deliberation into looking into these matters, because others just come and they don't dwell much into giving us solutions. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doc, for the presentation. My question to you, Doc, is that your recommendation is that Section 25 of the Constitution must be amended to allow expropriation without compensation. Now, there is an outcry in the country of race war as soon as the land is expropriated. Now, I want to check with you, Doc, with your research that you have done, do you see that as an immediate thing or as an event that can happen in a country where when the Section 25 of the Constitution is amended, there will be a race war? Another question for me is that how are you presently, you said you are representing about plus minus 300,000 black farmers. Now, I want to check the status, the current status where you are operating as black farmers currently. How is the environment that you are operating in, especially where the land, most of the land is in the hands of the white people? How does that affect your operations? Lastly, is the issue of accessing funds as emerging black farmers. Do you struggle to access funds? And how are you struggling, if you struggle, to access funds and to access the means of banks and all those economic hubs in the country? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Doc, for the presentation. I'm here. Okay. I want to preface my question with the following statement so that you respond in context. South Africa has high levels of food insecurity, and you take it upon yourselves to help to produce food. You say you have over 300 farmers in your association. Now, should there be more land made available to farmers or for farming operations through the amendment of the Constitution, what is the average size of a farm that is needed for it to make, one, economic sense, as well as to help to address the social needs, in particular food insecurity? Remember, the motion we passed in Parliament was about amending the Constitution in order to satisfy a public cause. And that's why I'm talking about the social needs. We've gone past a situation where people just farm for profit purposes. And that's why I want to know what is the average size that you would be needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to, let me touch on the last one. 6.2, you talk about a land ceiling. If you could explain what do you mean when you say land ceiling, or put differently, what are you proposing the land ceiling to be? And then on page 11, you indicate that you want to debunk the myth that transformative land distribution will harm the South African economy. You know, that argument has been raised many times, that we must be careful that we don't harm, and you're saying it's a myth that if we transform, it will harm the economy. If you could just expand on that one. And then finally, somewhere in your document you talk about water rights should be attached to property and not to ownership or something to that effect. I just don't know where, but it was somewhere in here. If you could talk to me about what's your understanding of the water rights, or what are you proposing exactly around water rights? Ngiyabonga, Chairperson.
There you have the questions posed to you and some comments. If ever there is a comment that says what you were saying was not true, don't be tempted to argue back. We believe that what you were saying was true. Fire on. You have not more than 10 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. You're not going to have that problem. And I would like to thank the honorable members for having gone through our document and for the questions. Let me quickly address them. First, the issue of the state capacity. The state capacity is something that we raise because we believe at the center of land reform problems and failures is the issue of state capacity. But we also appreciate that state capacity is in the form of human resource, financial resource. So in a sense, it is about placing the right people at the right places and also ensuring that you deploy the right financial resources to address the issues you're talking about. So the condition of the state capacity is not a permanent state. It is a matter that can be addressed, and it is a matter that we believe that through this process we are able to address, and already working together with the state, with private sector, all of us now currently engaged in those discussions. We believe that we can deal with that decisively. So it's not a permanent condition. It is a condition that if Parliament, civil society, as well as government, private sector come together and make sure that government accounts in addressing this issue properly and put the right people. We do have the people. We just don't have the right people at the helm right now. Linked to that is proposals that we are putting in terms of institutional reform, because we also believe that the current institutional dispensation is not the right one in addressing the right issues. And there are proposals around bringing a more effective and efficient approach in addressing, in targeting the farmers directly, which forms part of the proposals we make. So there's an issue that says most of the land is not, it's not true. We have evidence to what we have presented, particularly in terms of what we have dealt with. And we've also participated further with ARC in terms of the plus farms that were given, looking at what is productive and what is not productive. So it is a fact that most of the land that has been acquired has been land in former homeland areas. And we do know, the state of that land. And part of the issue that we are raising is that the approach or principle of willing buyer, willing seller is actually at the center of government getting unproductive land. Because what happens is, I'm a development planner. You need to plan, get an agroecological, condition of the land, have a plan of the markets, have a plan of the people and what that soil can give you. And you are able to say, the land that I'm acquiring is going to deal with this. We don't have that luxury in this country because we have a situation where you cannot deal at an area base and say this is what is needed. You sit and hope that Mr. van der Merwe will wake up one day and say, I am willing, and here is a piece of land that I'm putting forward. So basically, the structure is not conducive. So the people who become willing are not necessarily those who provide you with the most productive land. So it's a situation which is a fact, and also the prices which are so high for the productive land are also created problems. So that is an issue, and we have the specific pieces of land that we have been tracking across the board. So, and that is why we're saying most of it. We're not saying all of it, we're saying most of it. Where do these farms farm? We have a combination of farmers as AFASA. Some of them farm on communal land. They are subsistence farmers. Some of them are running cooperatives on land that has been acquired by government. They are also, the outcry of AFASA at this point is that most of them are on these leases, which are not signed, 3-month leases, and it's been a push from our side to get title deeds on some of this land. So others have acquired land on their own by purchasing land. So we've got a whole combination of people farming across in terms of these areas. And at the hearings, a number of AFASA members were there, and they were actually highlighting the issues directly and personally in terms of the problems of overgrazing as far as communal land is concerned. One farmer even highlighting that his cattle feed on Pampers, which are soil disposable nappies. So there is a serious problem there, but it is an area that we are hopeful that through this process will be. So the demand for land is big. And can I say that we are here not just to deal with Lindiwe's piece of land now. The debate that we are having is for the future of the people of this country. So it is not a debate in terms of where am I farming now. It is a debate of how do we make sure that we address issues of justice and equality and productivity for everybody. So the traditional land forms part of the package. But the traditional land, in terms of what we understand, you know, studies were done in the 60s, which were already showing that, you know, homeland land is already overgrazed. There is generally a land problem. And the issue now is not to perpetuate the spatial inequalities and push people further into homelands, which is where they are. What we are talking about is making land available so that people can be part and parcel of production across the board in the value chains that are not mainly in a particular area. But we are having serious discussions with the traditional leaders and actually looking at models of ensuring that we have security of tenure beyond just the land that individual communities own and have titles as far as CPAs are concerned. So this forms part of the package, and basically it is something that we are strongly dealing with. The compensation, which land? I think in our proposal, we make it very clear in terms of specifications where we believe very strongly considerations because of expropriation of land without compensation and where we can start. And basically that elaborates further in our document because I don't want to go through each and every one of that, and the chairperson is on my case. But we do specify in terms of possibilities of expropriation of land without compensation in those areas immediately. And the establishment of the land ombuds is another area. We came up with it already in 2016. The injustices and evictions on land, as well as the cases that black farmers find themselves in. And even when cases, you know, in terms of price and all that, you depend, if you don't have money to go and get the right lawyer who will fight for you, you are doomed. And it is one of the reasons the farmers are pushing for an amendment, because they want a clarification, because they are saying what happens is that you can have a legislation out of the constitution that pushes for expropriation without compensation. But the problem is that that could be contested to be unconstitutional. And that can put us in a situation that we sit in courts for life. And the ombuds is to specifically address the issues of people who are in these situations of being exposed to dispossession and injustices and evictions, and also unfair practices as far as the issues of the just and equitable pricing model is concerned. Okay. The race wars, we do not believe that there could be race wars. We as AFASA have been working very closely with the 3 other unions in NAFU and also Agri SA and DAO. And our focus as part of that has been to specifically address our issues of diversity, but also look at the concerns on the other side. What is good with that process, because it's been an ongoing process, is that recently we announced a collaboration of all of these, where we're working towards a national agricultural plan. And all four agreed that the current land reform situation is not feasible. And we are working towards something.
Thank you very much. Members, I know that some of your questions might not have been answered, but in the interest of time, those who feel very strong that they need answers, they can get the answers in writing from the good doctor. We have run out of time for this session. Mr. Zibam,
Chair, I think that the novel issue that is arising now is the issue of land ceilings. It will be very important to be given guidance by AFASA on the land ceiling of what is your proposed land ceiling.
Can I give you a minute, Doctor, on the land ceiling?
Yeah. Okay. The land ceiling is linked to water. Can I quickly deal with that? Because the critical issue here is that we're sitting with 98% of water rights sitting with white establishments. So basically our push is that there is no way that we can deal with that. We need to align water rights to the property, because right now if the individual goes, the rights move with the individual. And there are changes within the department right now to address the legislation. But we believe that that needs to be addressed urgently. So the second part linked to the issue of land ceilings, we actually are working on the research at this point. We cannot give you a particular figure because it is something that we don't deal willy-nilly. We are very cautious to put a number and say, this is what you give to a farmer, because we, even amongst ourselves, you've got farmers who have less than 1 hectare to farmers who require, in terms of the production capacity and the market needs, you know, hundreds of hectares. So the issue is in terms of particularly looking at this at a broader level, issues of foreign ownership, and you know, and that is something we would rather present our proposition on that.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Yes. I believe the next presenter here will be...
Sorry, Chair. My apologies, Chair. Are you going to ask the presenter to supplement her answers in writing? Because obviously there were some questions that were not answered and she might like to supplement to the committee. Thank you, Chair.
That's all.
I appreciate that.
Sure. Thanks. Sia, you will be in touch with the doctor on that particular issue. Our next presenter here, according to the problem, will be Tshwane Inner City Arts and Cultural Heritage Forum. Okay. Are they around? Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Oh, you will present from there? No, I thought the good doctor will give space. That's Mr. Sindiso Solonzi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity to everybody who came through and the officials in the assembly. My name is Archdeacon Old Emmanuel. I'm representing the Tshwane Inner City Arts and Cultural Heritage Forum in Pretoria, and I'm also here as the chief of the Abantu, the Mamfengu Kingdom, based in Ngamakwe, including the traditional locations of Butterworth, Tsomo, and Aitu. So I appreciate the opportunity. We are here, I'm here because of my role of being involved on the land process from the age of 16, 17 in Umtata. We bought a land from Zambule in Thornhill Farm. That land was occupied by some of our fellow neighbors, but we shared it amongst each other. As well, I'm here because I responded with my people. Also, whom I expected will be part of this panel, Chief Marcela from Khayelitsha, who is representing the Khoisan, and also Chief Bikicha, who is the current chairperson of the Amamfengu Kingdom. But due to some other commitments, they couldn't be able to be here. But to appreciate the opportunity, we'll be representing as well the social cohesion programs of Contralesa, which recently was formulated on the 6th of August in SLN Park in Pretoria under the chairperson of Dr. Matola Motseha. So at the moment, on our position on the land, we support expropriation of land without compensation because our people have suffered the most injustices in South Africa, from colonial regimes, from people who came in our country illegally and also took the land by force, with the multitudes of our people who were assassinated on the Ngaiqibi Wars, famously known as the Frontier Wars. Those wars started during the early 1700s and they ended in 1889. My uncle, Chief Bikicha from the Royal House of Dlamini House, was the grandson of the first leadership that met during the time of Bishop Alif in Butterworth, who took our people to Eped to form a treaty during the times of the wars. So our people, they formally agreed to have a treaty with the British Queen Victoria, and some of them they joined the workforce of white people, and some of them were fighting amongst the white forces. But that treaty was broken based on the distrust that came out from the relationship that we were trying to establish with the Europeans who were here. So in 1889, the treaty was abolished, but my uncle Bikicha was invited to England during the time of Victoria to be thanked for their role. But for now, we are responding because most of our land was lost in those wars, starting from here in Cape Town, and most of our people were driven to what is famously known as the homelands in Transkei, and they ended up in the Kai River. That's where the wars ended up, in Ciskei along the Fish River. So we have realized that in this present time, it's very, very necessary that as the current government is pursuing this program, it's very convenient that the traditional authorities, they should be given maximum recognition and contribution and ultimate working together with the state of South Africa, which is a democratical institutions. Where I come from, there have been a lot of questions from the country at the present moment about the role of traditional leadership and what they can play at this moment, but people seem to forget that traditional leadership have been here and they've played a significant role in governing the country and contributing in terms of agriculture. I grew up under the education of K.D. Matanzima, who was the first state black South African to lead government here in South Africa in 1963 up until 1979. KD made a very exemplary, good example to generate a very huge amount of economy through agricultural science, which amounted to 450 billion and above during the long time period, of which it was an aristocracy having democratical institutions within it. So we feel that the process of handling the land of the section 25.1 needs to be amended, and we should allow expropriation of land without compensation to proceed. And also all the past disadvantaged communities, they need to be appropriated their human rights by being given back their forefathers' property, which is meaning their inheritance, their lands, and everything that prevails there. And all the rural communities and land property that is under the administration of the traditional leaderships, it should be kept in that state. And some of the land is actually been taken. Most of our people, they can still remember, because that process of taking the land by force is something that has been also continuously happening, not only from 1652. Most of our people, we still have them today. They still locate the land that was taken from them, and they have never been given back that land. And the government have never done any program to give those people back that land. So we feel that there should be a program, and we have generated a program now of an audit whereby we have consulted with all our people, because most of our nation resided in Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and in Namakwe. Original Namakwe is the original of the Nama people, Namakwa, and that's why they were calling this area Namakwa land, because some of them they migrated to Namibia and some of them went to Botswana, while others were in Tshwane. Most of them have been called Amahlubi, but you are different tribes. So we have reformed our nation of Amamfengu to be called by the old nation of Abantu, which means the Bantu nation. Because we believe that in the current misunderstandings that people, they don't understand about who we are as South Africans. There have been a lot of debates regarding to that, but so far we claim and acknowledge that we are the descendants of Abatwa. I am from Mtwagu, which means the place of Abatwa. And close to my village, Mtwagu, we have another village called Klekwini, which is also the original Sen and the Khoi names. So those people, they intermarried with our Abantu people. So we have a rightful claim to be the descendants of Abatu, which means they were the Khoi and the Sen people. In anthropology, I've done this research. I have evidence to prove our existence in this country, which is 2,000 years ago. White people, they know about our existence in this country. That is not only from the time they came here, it's more than 2,000 years. And we have evidence of pottery and a lot of artifacts to prove our existence, and also our agricultural efforts in terms of practicing agriculture within this country. When white people came, they found us with cows, we're doing agriculture. We lost a lot of all those properties. Our people are suffering today, living in very, very unfavorable conditions. So we feel that with the trustees that we have recovered as well, which was signed by Sir George Grey in 1855 for Amamfengu Nation, which includes the areas in Cape Town, in Port Elizabeth, we have tabled a program to reclaim those locations. But we believe those are not the only locations that we can be claiming back. So we hope that the government is going to assist us in that regard. Families in rural and urban areas should retain their property without any interference from state or municipality offices. But the traditional leadership is to monitor the process in a just and fair, transparent manner known to the culture of that society. South Africa is a rainbow country, now with so many other nations residing here. However, there have been other people who came from various locations. So we claim and believe that South African land belongs to the indigenous communities of this continent, which means the Abantu, the Khoi, the San, and also at this present moment we welcome all the other people who come and reside in this country, but we wish that our heritage and culture should be considered and respected according to the Constitution, as we have the National Heritage Resource Agency of 1997 and the Tshwane Declaration Act, which actually approves the recognition of indigenous communities and also the UNESCO traditional recognition. Thank you.
No,
Thank you, Chairperson.
You can wrap up.
Okay. In closing, I would love to see that after this program, we will have a balanced approach that the government can work side by side with the traditional communities, and also with the formula that we will be presenting with the government in terms of how the distribution process should be handled. We believe that it will be a successful program. Thank you very much.
Members, Honorable Smith, there's only one clarity seeking question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Honorable Filter.
Thanks, Chair. The presenter spoke about the land should be given back to the people. Are you suggesting that people get title deeds? Or who owns the land? That's the first question. When you say that the land should be given back to the people, and at the same time you also talk about the role of the chiefs and so on must not be touched. We know that in those areas there's no title deeds. So are you suggesting we give those people title deeds, or how do we handle it when you say give it back to the people? And then just, I'm very curious, somewhere here you're saying traditional land should not be sold to foreigners unless foreigners married and live in that area. Who exactly are foreigners? When you say it should not be sold to the foreigners, who are you talking about exactly when you say foreigners? Thanks, Chair.
I just want to get this clear. Is your submission saying that you agree with amendment of section 25 of the Constitution to allow for expropriation of land without compensation? Is that your position? And how do we then redistribute the land? Like, what is the summary of your submission in terms of how the land should be redistributed once it has been expropriated without compensation? The concise answers will help us to understand your thinking in terms of your submission, because some of the issues that you raised, I don't think they are necessarily related to what we're busy with here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. You say specifically that you want section 25(1) to be amended. Now, if that were to take place, how would those people who acquire land, how would their property rights be protected if section 25(1) were to be amended? Unfortunately, you don't give us an indication of what kind of wording should replace section 25(1). I know that's the primary subsection that protects property right, which is very much at the center of this whole debate, since we started. So I would like to know now, if it were to be amended, how would you want it to be reworded? Secondly, would you confirm that you are more about protecting heritage, culture, and enhancing livelihood of the landless people in South Africa? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Those were the questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Let me start with the first question of title deeds. Currently, the traditional communities in Transkei and other areas in South Africa does not have title deeds for those lands. As a result of our inheritance, we were not using title deeds for lands in those times of our traditional leadership until the new forms of governance that were introduced during the colonial times, during the time of Sir George Grey. I have the trust deeds that were given by him from that time, but those trust deeds does not cover all the areas that our nation was residing on them. So the trust deeds in this present time, our position on trust deeds, we're working to have the traditional leadership whole body opening a trust for that whole community that it is representing. And the people who are part of that traditional community will then be given portions of land after the consultation. So we are working on this process now through the traditional leadership areas of all the country as a form of a social cohesive effort to bring this general formula for everybody to have a generalized approach of how the process can be handled. But when it comes to the trustees, we believe that the traditional leadership must be the one that is handling that, and then the people who are part of that community can then have a sharing of that land. And also, you spoke about the program of distribution, how it should be handled. The program of distribution, we are working on having a program whereby, as a traditional leadership, we have a formula whereby it's been operating for all these centuries, but that formula is not been documented according to the modern ways in terms of putting it on paper. So what we are proposing now, because there's been a gap when it comes to the modern ways of governance and traditional leadership. So at the moment, we want a process whereby all the traditional leadership is being trained formally, and we have approached the traditional affairs, and they are already having a program of training the traditional leadership there, but we'll be adding more in relation to this bill of amending section 25.1 of the Constitution so that it can relate to how they distribute land to all their communities. And also when it comes to that distribution program as well, we are still having issues of consent because other land we haven't really reclaimed it back as a traditional leadership. Hence our people, they lost that land through force. So that is another process that we are also pursuing. And also when it comes to the process of how the constitution will be amended and the details of that process, how are we going to handle it? We support the process of expropriating the land without compensation because that land was not bought. So we don't believe that people should buy back that land. The land, it should be distributed to the people. In my own place where we reside, people, they don't buy land from a chief. They either submit a few items or a goat, and then they will be given a portion of land, which is quite a reasonable amount of land for farming, for having your family, and when you are married. And also coming to your question of a foreigner, who is a foreigner? In Africa and also in South Africa generally, specifically, we have the indigenous communities, which are the Khoi, the Abantu, the other tribes, which are mostly belonging to the children of Ham, the son of Noah, during after the flood. So they have been migrating all over the continent. We have many tribes now. Those are the indigenous communities of Africa, and it's protected by the United Nations Bill and Acts. But when it comes to a foreigner, it means any person who comes from outside the borders of South Africa, and also more especially from another continent. But based on the present reconciliations of the country, whereby we're having a lot of other people who are residing here, Chinese, Indians, we're not discriminating against those people. Coming to the issue of marriage, when it comes to the issue of marriage, we are considering marriages within our families, within our own nations. It would be an African other person who would come within our location to marry within our own location. But when it comes to the giving out of ownership of that land, it's something that must be monitored on the traditional leadership process. So that one is something that is on a development program, because we are compiling now a document in relation to how this process should be handled. And then closing up with the issue of the amendment again to your questions of how the details of the amending of the land, section 25.1 and the property details. The issue of the land, we believe that the government at this present moment, it should work to give the people the land and amend the constitution to give the people without compensating without buying that land. The people mustn't buy the land, they should be given the land for free. And also the process whereby I spoke with the chief Ramadan in Pretoria. The chief gave me a portion of land there because I was discussing with him my family relations with Chief Tshwane. Hence, Chief Tshwane was the son of King Muzi. Those were the sons of Undlov from Umasok, from the original Nguni house of traditional leadership. But when it comes to how the process of handling the details of amending the constitution, it's very important now that the government assists the general population, because there will be a process of tension now whereby people, they don't want to leave that land that they have occupied. We don't say that people who are white people mustn't have the land, but the land must be redistributed to everybody fairly, so everyone can have the land to reside and also have the land to farm. The process whereby the Department of Rural Development there is putting a lot of requirements on the form. When you apply for land, they want you to have a degree in agricultural science and all that. It's a long process which is very unfavoring our people. When it comes to the training of agriculture, we grew up doing agriculture. It's an inherited heritage. We learn it from the family, from our grandfathers. It's something that we were doing. We don't go to school for it, but we don't discourage going to school, having degrees. I've also studied agriculture. I know the technological side of it, but we promote that everybody must be given the land without having a qualification on agriculture. People will be trained. I'm glad that there is a African Federation of African Farmers, which we can bring on board to partner. We work together. We train all our people to practice modern farming and also economical benefits of farming in terms of exporting. Most of the land here is owned by foreign people in South Africa, which is quite a very wrong process. So we wish to have our people being upfront of the economy and also having a share of the land. So that is very, very fundamental. When it comes to the ownership, we believe that our traditional leadership must have a sharing of the land that is going to be governed in partnership with the national government that is currently running the country. And that process should be part of the constitution. Thank you very much.
Are you a traditional leader in Pretoria or in...
Okay. No, I'm a traditional leader in Eastern Cape, mostly originally in Ngamakwe.
Okay.
In Ngamakwe, but we are having a council of Amamfengu there, which starts from Willow Vale, Butterworth, Tsomo, and Butterworth. Yeah, those are the main traditional locations. But the other ones, they're outside, Statarem, East London, to Epid.
So the issue of Tshwane is because you...
No, Tshwane is just I'm there because of my affiliation with other structures there. I'm working with for other development programs.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is a mobile history where we get.
The next presentation, Landless people, is it Landless movement of South Africa? Mr. Mashage.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, Constitutional Review Committee, Parliament of the Republic of South Africa in Cape Town. I thank this opportunity to present our position as LAMOSA. Firstly, I am Speaker Mahlake of Murray Busho in Bushbuck Ridge. You know Bushbuck, a northern area, and Entlanzeni in Mpumalanga province. I'm a community leader. I'm also elected on board of LAMOSA. Our democratic community structures is an affiliated to LAMOSA, and LAMOSA participated in hearings of Constitutional Review Committee about Section 25 at various public hearings, and the Portfolio Committee on Rural Development and Land Reform about the Restitution Amendment Bill. Now, honorable members, before I go further, let me pronounce before you that I'm with a worker lawyer in LAMOSA. Mr. Hank Smith is here with me. Now, I addressed the Motlanthe High Level Panel in January 2016, sorry, in Nelspruit. And our legal entity has still not received a title deed. Now, as I'm speaking now, in Murray Busho Traditional Authority, they are finalizing verification process. And this is an insult to the land claimants of our area. I'm talking about the 4 portions, Onverwacht, Vooruitzicht, Hebron, and Welgevonden. What we have seen for the past 25 years, it's a recycling of a regional land claim commission in our area, particularly Mpumalanga province. And they have done little to address the question of restitution. At the national level, LAMOSA monitored the land reform program over 25 years and participated in 3 cases in the Constitutional Court to protect the integrity of the program. LAMOSA also assists communities to implement our own action plans. Lamusa filed submission and PowerPoint presentation of 9 pages for this hearing. I shall talk to the presentation for 10 minutes, and I would like to answer questions on the presentation. Section 25 is about